Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm so excited to introduce Meena to you today and this amazing product and project. And we've been talking beforehand, and now I'm super excited. And I hope if you guys, somebody could let me know if I sound okay. That'd be great. And then when Meena starts talking, just do the same thing over there. That way I can adjust volumes if we need. Thanks, Anne. I appreciate it. Um, so here's how Spreecast works. Thank you, Jason. Here's how Spreecast works. You're able to chat with us in the chat window. I really try to act like a DJ, so I'm reading so Meena doesn't have to, and I'll pull questions on. You can also submit questions right under Meena. There's a submit question button, and then it's under all these images, so it may be faster if you do it over there. But here's what Design Recharge is about. It's every week you come and you're able to get re-energized, because that's one thing for me as a designer. I have my own company. You're able to come out and get energized or hear about a new project, and stuff like that keeps your creativity going. So I'm really big on motivating. Hopefully that's what Design Recharge is for you guys, because it is for me. So Meena, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to design and what you're doing right now, and then we'll jump into the project.
My background, let's see. Hi Simon. I started illustration school actually back in 2000, the year 2000, and at Virginia Commonwealth University. I started illustration with communication arts and design back at VCU, back when it all used to be one big thing, and there wasn't illustration and then graphic design. There wasn't any of that. It was just all kind of one thing. Yeah, VCU. Um, and I graduated in 2004 after studying in Florence, Italy. I did a lot of different things. I went to the Illustration Academy after I left VCU, and then went to work in the real world for quite a number of years, and then decided I wanted to get my master's. And so I went back to VCU and I said, well, there's a graphic design visual communications MFA program. It's ranked really high in the nation, so I went ahead and I applied and I got in, and I am now a tenure track professor at Virginia State University at the art and design program there.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much for letting us know that you guys can hear us. So Meena has worked on this project. As design educators, we have our own businesses and we do projects just like regular. We would not be very good design professors if we weren't designing, I don't think. But so Chuck Scalin was a professor at Virginia Commonwealth, and he does a lot of fine art as well. He was in the communication art and design program at VCU. But so how did you get to know Chuck, and then how did this project come about?
So I never had Chuck as a professor, by the way. I actually, funny enough, I had his son Noah back when Noah had just started teaching. He taught me, I think it was one of those computer classes. So Noah and I have known each other for a number of years, and funny enough, we happen to be neighbors. Noah and I tend to go out to lunch together, and one day he said, hey, my dad's been working on this project, and I really think you would be a good person for him to talk to. So it's all Noah's fault, really. So that's how I
so
started.
so you and Noah, and then you met Chuck before, or
Yeah, I'd
okay,
actually
so
been to the Body of Evidence show. He had an opening at Ghost Print Gallery, and I was there actually serving drinks with Noah's wife and a few of the other women in the neighborhood. We we were there and we were working, and I was well aware of the work, and I had a hard time serving drinks that night because I was looking more at the work than serving, really.
so explain a little bit about Chuck's what he was doing, and then why he decided to actually produce this as sort of a book per se.
Well, I think Chuck is actually here too. He would be the best person to ask, the why did he do this? But um, from what I understand, it's born of a love for mystery and sort of the unsolved. And he did a beautiful job of creating these assemblages with these articles, these pieces that were just found sort of objects. Putting them together in these cases, they told a story that words didn't need to be, at the time brought into. So these assemblages were just kind of there on their own. And at this opening, people were reading into the story behind the assemblage. They started projecting their idea of what maybe this unsolved mystery was. And so then, it became this thing where, well, what if we had people write a story about it? And so Chuck worked through all of that. He found a series of authors. We had 14 assemblages, so 14 images, and Chuck had an extra author, 15 authors in total, write an introduction. Tom DeHaven is his name. And we all together sort of collaborated on this giant piece, taking one assemblage at a time, each author getting one, writing a story about that, and then I basically brought it all together in a designed piece.
So, did you have complete creative freedom? I haven't even started on my questions. I'm sorry, Mina. I always send everybody questions and I'm like skipping over that. I'm so excited. So, did you have an idea of what this would look like? Did Chuck have an idea, or did you have complete creative freedom to kind of see what it was?
Well, uh, I think Chuck and I have worked really well together. This was really fortunate that you don't always get such a great client, and you certainly don't get such a great relationship. But throughout the entire process, I think I had so much respect, and I have had so much respect for the work that I've wanted to prune this piece to allow the work to be the biggest part. And I think sometimes as designers, we tend to get like really excited about what we're doing and we forget a little bit about the work and how that needs to show. And the
Right.
goal of this was to get, it was about the work. It was born of each one of these 14 assemblages. So um, Chuck really gave me a lot of room to do what I wanted, but every idea went past him. Every single idea went past him, and he had the yay or the nay, and it's also about time and deadline and money and supplies, all of those things, because these are all handmade. These artist books. So I had a lot of
So,
control, but he was. We always had a conversation.
So let's give them a little bit of background, and maybe we need to pull some of the images up. But this is not like a today unsolved mystery. It kind of had a vintage kind of feel. So can you just talk about some of the parameters that you were wanting to meet? You wanted those points to be made when you saw it visually. Oh, yeah, this is old, or this is whatever.
Yeah. Well, it had a sort of a feeling of noir and detective and pulp, and just there was a sort of a feeling in the background to me when I looked at these pieces that they were aged. Each one of the pieces has like a window; it's fogged. Um, so I wanted to make sure that no matter what, this artist book was going to look like it had been around somewhere, it had been kept somewhere, that you needed to kind of wipe off the cover so that you could see the plaque on the front, that it was something important inside, and whatever you opened inside sort of felt like a relic. So there were a lot of things that went into that, right down to the type of leather that was being used to strap everything in. And I think there's an image of what the
Mm-hmm.
inside looks like. The D rings, there are metal D rings that that hold the leather, inside. Those were each taken to a place in Richmond called Tectonics. And Tectonics, I worked with a guy named Mike there. They work on like large signage stuff. I mean, they're much more. They don't do things like this. But I asked them if they could possibly take all of my D rings, the bag of D rings, and throw them in to this tumbler that had just like scrap metal in it, because these D-rings were beautifully like bronze and bright, and there's no way that that would have looked authentic if they had been so pretty. So they needed to get thrown in a metal scrap tumbler. So that's what happened, and because of that, they have an aged quality, and when you touch them, they have this sort of feeling. Um,
So
on mhm.
So I just if you don't if you're new to how Spreecast works, but you can actually click in the little window that's popped up. If you mouse over it and then you mouse back on it, you'll be able to move it, and you can put it on my top of my face, or you can put it on top of the chat or whatever. Um, but we're going to be pulling images up so that you guys can plop, move it around and see kind of what she's talking about. But this is where you're talking about the leather and these D rings, right?
Yes. And the leather strips, we bought the whole hide, and it's a marbled leather. And so I cut it into strips. The leather, I pull it a little bit so it's not tight and new and fresh feeling. The marbleization of the leather also makes it feel like it's, old, that it's worn. On some of the leather, there's a stamp that says, from the hide, and, all the information about that leather. I retain all that. I don't cut around that stuff because it feels even more exciting if there's typography on it. Um, Also, the interior papers are they are from they're from Israel. The pattern is marbled paper from that I actually found from a vendor in Israel, and he sent over some sheets. And what we did, and we went through a lot of marbled paper here. This wasn't a flippant decision. Um, this particular piece of marbled paper has sort of like a blood splatter feel. It doesn't feel like safe marbled paper. It has a little bit of mystery in it. It has a little bit of danger in it. Has a little bit of that, like, sort of like that Dexter sort of feel to it. I mean, the show. And so what we did was we got the marbled paper shipped over. We took the paper because we wanted this piece to be archival. These pieces, the entire thing is archival. It'll last forever. What we did was we had Uptown Copy scan in the paper. I had end leaf paper. End leaf paper, by the way, is like book repair paper. Old books that the Library of Virginia uses end leaf paper. I actually called a friend who works for the Library of Virginia and had him tell me, what can I use to print on here that's going to be archival and that's going to be durable. So we printed the marbled paper print onto end leaf paper, and that also gives it that feel of old quality. Also, we've got the little labels that Chuck has painstakingly cut out. Those are die cut by hand by Chuck. Those were designed to look like labels, and I mean they are, but they were designed to look like labels in Photoshop. They were printed out. Each one of those labels has one of Chuck's signatures. It has the edition number. Those labels are on every single book if you open it up. So there's just a lot of detail, and I actually have one of the books here.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
open it
detail.
up and kind of give them an idea of what it is.
So once you open it, and you're kind of seeing the exact same thing over there. Once you open it, there's the labels over here. You're seeing two little black uh, bolts and screws. those are keeping the front plaque on. The front plaque was, I designed it, but it was printed out by Jason Lepton at Big Secret in Richmond. It's got Chuck's name, it's got the name of the project, it's got the year, and actually the process of how I put these on with the template and everything. I think we have a picture of that too. But once you open it up, um, the very first thing that you see is what is kind of like a newspaper clipping. It's printed on, it's actually French paper. So again, it's archival. It's not regular newsprint that would degrade, but it's printed on what feels like newsprint, and it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be a newspaper clipping of the actual sort of the events. Um, and once you get past that, as you continue to open up the piece, the very first book inside of it is the intro book. And the intro book is the introduction by Tom DeHaven. Every single one of the authors that worked on this got to sign. So I retained their signatures, and I put their signatures on each of these books because, again, they were an integral part to what we were doing. As in the way that the type is actually set, there we go. The way that the type is set, I'm trying to retain the quality of how an investigator would keep track of their work. So I've got a lot of markers over here that's kind of informing the reader and almost like a personal thing for the investigator to have used. It's got the case number, it's got the case title. It's sort of like an inter-office use. And each one is typeset, using proper typewriter.
Can
Sort of,
you pull it up closer so we can see it in the camera?
I don't know
Closer.
if that's working.
No, that works. It looks fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. Okay, great. I just wanted, and you had talked about, on a typewriter, you couldn't get italics. That wasn't something that was an option. So you were working out all those things and choosing the right typeface and setting things so that it looked authentic. And that's one of the things that amazes me about this project is that Meena took all this extra time to do things right. And in that research part, which, I was telling Meena before we started, I want every designer who's watching to be able to take away something. And we may not be able to do the whole piece like this because this whole piece is hand put together. I mean, I guess the box even, are you putting that together? It's
The
flat
inside,
piece of mat board or something?
yeah, the box is actually a clamshell box that we ordered. So that's
Okay.
like the only thing that's the only thing that comes pre-made. But the inset, that part that's raised on the
Mm-hmm.
inside part, that is handmade. And there's an image of what that looks like flat before I score it and then make it into this
Mm-hmm.
tray. It's a tray.
Let's see if I can pull that up. Well, this one is the template, I suppose, that you're,
Yeah. We use
which is
power tools in design.
yeah. Well, I like that you are showing us this part of the process. And it's not all super glamorous, but again, why was it the choice of doing these by hand? Because this was a huge aspect to the project.
Um,
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I have had the fortunate experience of being able to make many boxes as a designer, both at my time at JHI and my time with my work in my personal Lot 15 studio. But each time I've worked on that, it's been something that was not very. The craft level was always great, but it was always something that looked slick, slick and clean and shiny and new. And to ask somebody to manufacture a box that looks aged is a difficult thing to ask. And so the easiest thing to do was to create an assembly line of all the different pieces that go into this and just start to make them on our own. And that way it actually became an artist book as opposed to just a book. It becomes a piece of art. It retains the authenticity of this time, this period piece that we're kind of trying to create. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it elevates the value of it because you've got a few sets of hands that are working on this. You've got Chuck, who's cutting out those labels. You've got Jason Lefton from Big Secret, who's doing the image right there. Gosh, those laser cut plaques that are just beautiful. You've got several hours, of my time that's put into each one, so that when you buy it, or when a university buys it, and I know we'll talk about that in a minute, they're getting something is that has a lot more layers to it than, oh, it was just made by this house or this design firm. It's got a lot more layers, and the authenticity, like I said, for the timepiece is there.
Right. And so let's go ahead and this is, I think, the internal,
The
the thing
tray.
that it sits down, the tray.
Hmm.
Yeah, big word. I couldn't get four letters. Um, but and so obviously these templates, are they just out of mat board, the
Yep.
template?
Yep. It's black mat
Okay.
board. Yep.
Okay, cool. So then you go from there to this piece, and this is showing a bunch of them kind of cut out.
Yes, yes. And so what I'll do is I'll get into the middle there of the biggest black piece. I'll start to get in the middle. So I cut out the middle part of the tray, and each one of these guys sits inside of this piece. And so you can see kind of how the tray works here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yep.
that's kind of how it's working.
Cool.
Yeah.
So with let's see what the next one is. This is another these are like strips, I think.
Hmm. Yep,
So
that's the
what
back of the
where
M8 paper.
oh, okay. Cool. So here's another one. I think I can do it without pulling. So this kind of is showing you the process,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
so there's a
everything's
lot of
kind of
process.
out there.
Yeah.
Do you want to it's so in the far back in front of the chair, there's the box and the leather and the D-rings already together.
Hmm.
And then you have the newspaper clipping right next to it.
Hmm.
And then you have these are the pieces. These are the assemblage, the photos of the assemblages
Assemblages. Yep.
or assemblages. I'm in Alabama. That's how we say it down here. I'm
Assemblage.
just kidding. Assemblages.
Yeah. So they actually they get tipped in, and this image that you're seeing is this image that you're seeing is actually my dining room. But funny enough, like sometimes I just need a new change of scenery, and I'll have to move from my studio. And you can also see my iPad, where clearly I'm watching like the IT crowd or something like that. Um, but what I'll do is I'll get them all in order, and then they go on. They get tipped in, and these are accordion fold books. So again, each one of the authors had their own, and each one of the authors had a word count. Like they had a limit. Um, Sometimes it was a little bit difficult to fit everything on to this one space that I was allowed, because again, we were working in a budget, and I didn't want to order special paper if I didn't have to. So there were certain considerations that had to go into how long the paper could be. But again, you're seeing, the case number, and then over here, the Terry's signature. Yep, that's Terry. And also her bio. So
Ah,
each one of the authors was able to give us a bio. We were able to promote them a little bit because they were doing this. They were doing this because they wanted to. And so they were kind of donating their time to this project. So we were trying to get, everything we could to get them some credit that they deserved for doing it.
so in this next image, you are kind of putting things together. Can you just talk about what glue choice were you choosing Was it Sobo glue? Is that what?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
so Sobo glue, and if I'm using a dry glue, then it's going to be Studio Tack. And those are the two glues that I'll use. You can see my burnisher is up there. Sobo glue works, it needs the friction in order to keep the, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sobo glue, it needs the friction of burnishing in order to keep its adhesion. That heat helps it to adhere. Studio Tack, that's just a dry glue that comes in large sheets. You can cut down the strips. And I mean, a lot of this did have to do with the knowledge that I already have of making artist books. I would not have come to this conclusion of, oh, let me make them if I had no clue of where to start. I certainly hope that people would not take on such a task, but I felt comfortable with it.
So were you always kind of crafty? Like, is that you would say, oh yeah, I do a lot of things like that?
Oh
Or
no.
was this you made a lot of books on your own?
In grad school, I started to make a lot of books. We had to grad school. We had to make a lot of
I
stuff.
remember.
So it became something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed learning how to bind and to stitch, and I enjoyed learning the different folding methods and things like that. And there's not very many people that are out there doing this. Is the other thing. So if you can find a way to do something, if you're a young person trying to make a name for yourself, if you can find a way to do something that not very many people are out there doing, it helps as a younger designer, which I no longer am, sadly, but if it helps to be able to get your name out there and to market yourself as somebody who can do something like this.
And it helps you stand out. I mean, I also really think that you can do some things that are hand done that help you to stand out in a way as well. So I have another question. So again, we're on a budget. So you think, oh, these are all by hand. This is costing a ton of money, but it looks like it was just printed on. I would love for you to tell me what kind of paper each story, and each story was the same amount of accordion folds, right? It wasn't some people got longer. So there was standardization in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like black ink in any color you're doing with these labels.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
this is able to be really low cost. It
Mm-hmm.
takes time,
Yeah.
but you're able to give your client a little something extra because you were doing some of it by hand. But talk
Right.
about your paper and ch choosing to only do it in black.
So the French paper is, we used a combination of French and Mohawk, um, and the um, the the images. If you look at the piece, you notice that the things that are in color are the marbleized paper, the leather strap, the labels, and the most important thing, Chuck's assemblages. So each one of these assemblages is on this very unseeming sort of uh, accordion fold. It stands out. Those assemblages are printed on a cardstock. It's pretty much like a
Hmm.
postcard, it would feel like. That gives it a little bit of weight for each accordion fold, which is really kind of small and thin. Um, so having the assemblage on the cardstock, having the assemblage in color, and having it weigh each one of the stories down gave each assemblage a feeling of importance. So I think, yeah, cost was a big reason as to why a lot of these, the stories are black and white. Um, but even how perfect was it? I mean, that you couldn't. I mean, it was a great choice that we had to make them black and white because it helped the pieces to stand out even more. Um,
So Chuck's pieces
mhm.
are on the Mohawk paper, or are they also on the French paper?
Chuck's pieces are on a cardstock that was chosen by Chuck and Brian Walker at Uptown Copy
Is
here
it
in Richmond.
Is it shiny? Is it glossy so it looks like it was like a photo? It is matte as well.
It's like almost like a satin. Can you see that
Okay.
slight
Mm-hmm.
shimmer? Yeah. It's like a satin. It's I mean, it's matte. It's not shiny. It got a little bit of sheen just because of the ink that's laying on top of the piece,
Hmm.
right? The only light that's coming, the only reason that that's there is because the ink is laying on top.
Right. So then you have the other pieces. So we've pretty much talked about everything in this piece except the little envelope and the stuff inside the envelope. So what
Yeah.
was that purpose? Because again, it's really hand done. I take each out, and we had talked about like Griffin and Sabine, I think, when we were doing our test. You know, it feels kind of like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there are these books that came out in the 90s. You actually take the letters out and you read them, but they were all pre-printed. So this is behind everything?
Yep, it exists in the very, very back. And these images were actually shown at Chuck's opening. Um, he took these photographs. These are his. Again, this all of this work is his. These photographs that are inside um, are, you know, nobody's saying this necessarily, but it is as if it's case scene documentation is what we've called it. So it's as if he's taken photographs um, where these events could have occurred. But a lot of it requires the reader's participation in sort of believing and getting into the mystery. But they're black and white photographs that just add another level of evidence.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love how that they're in that other like black envelope, you know, that it's another layer of the sealed kind of mystery, something else to uncover. Are these printed on the same paper as the other?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So, I
And
mean, they come across almost golden in at least this photo. They kind of have that kind of black and white, but it's like a warm black and white piece feel.
yeah, and it's the way that he it's the way that it was printed. But you know, we had a few press checks, you know, making sure that the colors were right, that things weren't too green. That became an issue at one point. That we wanted to make sure that the color balance was really nice. Um, oh, another thing that I wanted to say, the envelopes themselves, these have the oh dear, what are they called again? I completely forgot. But they're
String
the
buttons. I don't know, but
they're this it's something string, yeah. But it's maybe one of you guys out there knows. I'm forgetting right now, but yeah, it's like the hook and string, um, and then the leather strap is you have to pull it in order for it to close, and this you have to kind of go round and round. There were there were things that I wanted to do with this that made string button right, Ann. There are things that I wanted to do with this as far as closures because I just didn't want some random like a regular old envelope. How much more interesting would it be if you had to undo this string, and how much more interesting would it be if you had a leather strap holding these things in with a D-ring? A lot of the times when Chuck and I were talking, you know, he would bring up Dexter, again the show, and he would bring up the movie Seven, and if there was ever a time where I could bring in some sort of like morbid sort of maybe choking or whatever it could be to allude to these things, if we're talking as professors using semiotics and our understanding of if one thing that can allude to something else, then I would use it. And so this guy, and then the leather strap of, if it could be anything that was reminding us of choking, I would do it.
well, but it's also that's how a lot of envelopes were like that back then. That was just a standard kind of closure. So again, it brings that authenticity. And again, there's more labels. So right now we have the placard on the front. We have a signature label as well as a whatever number
there's a,
label in the
there's a signature,
inside
an edition, each case
edition.
number. These have their own labels. So, and there's a label on the exterior. There's a label right, where can I
Oh
go?
yeah,
Right
on the
here.
edge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because the clamshell box has a little lip, and that little part is seen. So if it's seen, and there's a way that I can get, as designers, again, we're always trying to get people to open the book, right? To open the book. And if I could get somebody interested in seeing what's underneath there, then put your thumb in there and open it up. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, these are so like icing. Like this is like cake icing. I just want to, I want to eat it. Or I talk about in class, you need to be looking at things that are, if all you're eating is McDonald's visually, then no offense to McDonald's, then you're going to design like McDonald's, and if all you're eating is some awesome burger like Ruth Chris or something, then you're going to design better. So visually what you're putting in, but this is like, oh my gosh, I want to touch this. And I think that's what you wanted. You wanted
Yeah.
this, you wanted I feel like I've been transported to another time when I'm going back because everything is so authentic. And I think to me, what it says is you can do this. You're using color very sparingly. Again, those papers, and I think the paper makes it such a drama. It has such a dramatic effect. And then the labels, you're using your color there. So it's small, but it's very perfect in, and I don't know if the labels are cream or if they're white.
They're both. Both of them are. They're both
Oh,
colors, cream and white. Because
see,
they were
my
two
eyes are
different types
good.
of labels. And you figuring if this
Yeah.
thing is going through, an inner office, like if it's just a pile of evidence that's been sitting on a detective's desk, for many years, then it's been slapped with labels and, not always perfectly, not always aligned. But each label says something very important, has a signature. So if it was a signature, it should clearly be Chuck's. So Chuck's signature is on this thing, I think, 3 times. Um, but yeah, I just didn't want to. Hi, John. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to distract from his assemblages. And yeah, go ahead.
So this is I'm so excited. One thing I love, and again, okay, how you're thinking, how can I use this with my clients? Listen to what Meena just said, and this just gives me chills. What about if you were the detective? And it's that pretend. This is why my husband says I'm in here playing on the computer all the time when I'm working, because we get to pretend like we're somebody else. I don't care if you're selling roach spray, you get to pretend like you're whoever. So you can do something like this with no matter what. If you're a corporate designer, I know Meredith's a corporate designer. You're like, how can I ever do this? But it's that hand, that touch, that feel that people so want to connect to, that real, authentic. You've used that word a ton of times, but it's that we get to get inside the mind of what we want people to have that experience. And it doesn't matter what we're selling or marketing or but we need to get them to feel like they are part of the experience. And I think that's what's so cool as a designer. But I'm totally like, I love these unsolved mystery shows or whatever,
Yeah, they're
and I
great.
think you said that was kind of what Chuck kind of had got this idea kind of from. Excuse me. But it is, man. I just want to. Anne said I should get my university to buy one. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to. So let's talk about that a little bit. So this is not like, hey, come, let's buy a book. And maybe, I'm sure some people could,
Mhm.
but more often these are going to be at possibly university libraries. But can you talk a little bit about what someone would need to do to look at one or purchase one or something like that? How's that happening?
All right. Well, this actually is in universities now. I know it's at BCU Special Collections, which is very exciting, and I know that it is of interest to universities to use this book as a teaching tool with regard to collaborations between, the fine arts and the literature disciplines. So how can they come together? And I love that I get to be a part of anything that's teaching collaboration. That's awesome. So I'm really kind of excited about that. But yeah, there are other ways to get your hands on one of these if you're very interested. Um, if you're interested, you can contact me. You can contact Chuck. You can go onto his Facebook. You can take a look there. But either way, any way that you want to get, if you really want to get your hands on one of these and you're interested in actually buying one, contacting me and I'll get you in touch with Chuck, or contacting Chuck. Yeah, there you go. You can contact me on Twitter right there. If you're very interested in getting one, and we'll get one to you. I still am making these. I knew what I was biting off when I did it, and I really enjoy the act of being able to make these pieces. They are a work of art that you get to own, and it's something you can actually interact with. And I think that that's what the universities are seeing as such a valuable tool. And I think that that's, why people have bought them for their own homes, to have. It's not just something, that's it's not just another piece of art you can hang on the wall. It's something you can actually interact with and read. If the stories
Yeah.
are really cool.
And that collaboration, I mean, give, I don't know what the word count was, but to give a writer a certain number, I mean, a lot of writers are familiar with working it within a word count, but that doesn't seem like that many because Courier or whatever typewriter typefaces are so
Yeah.
wide,
Yeah.
that you're like, really? You want me to write a whole story in that many words? I'm sure
Right.
that was a challenge for them. And again, that teaches people about that, again, that challenge of working with one color for us as designers, or for them working in a shorter word count.
Yeah, I can track some type. That was something that had to be done. There was like a bit of zhuzhing going on as far as the letting and the tracking, to make sure that it all looked optic optimally optical. That everything was looking really good. It didn't look crammed. Um, but again, still looking like it was created from a typewriter.
Yeah.
So I think the word count was about 600, if I'm remembering that correctly. And that was
And
difficult. That was very difficult for some of these writers. But it also gave them, a hard and fast rule that you have this much. You can only say this much. Some people didn't even
right.
use that many words.
So with they have the story, and are each is a different mystery, right? It's not connected like four of them are part of one or whatever. So that's cool too.
Yeah, they're in order as far as the year, because the authors were able to give them a year. They could say, okay, this happened in 1963. Okay, this happened in 1929. One of my favorites is written by Phil Ford. Some of them have to do with things that artists and designers can really appreciate. There's one love story about a girl whose father owns a printing press, and she gets in a romance with the hired hand. And I mean, these are really involved stories by extremely talented writers, that it's been a joy to kind of to read through them as I was typesetting them, or to put them in the proper order. I get a little lost in them sometimes.
I'm sure. Well, 14, right? There's 14 stories.
There's 14 assemblages, and then the very first, um,
Uh,
the introduction is written by Tom DeHaven.
Now that book right there, is that hand assembled as well? Hand stitched? Wow.
It's an accordion fold.
Oh,
and
accordion.
um, and in fact, you can kind of look at it there, that it's a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian rat fold.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to pull it up, I mean, it's all just one
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. All right, so we got to pull up a couple of these images, and we got 15 minutes to talk about your sketchbooks and that project, which I think is super cool too. Um, and maybe I just think your stuff's awesome. So is this 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning? That's my thought.
Evening. Yeah, that image. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you can kind of see my progress. I have And see, I have a hashtag. If you were to look, it's
Oh,
like hashtag body of evidence book art. So
okay.
I have all of that kind of happening on here, and I just Chuck and I recently won an award from AIGA at the grade competition for this piece. So that an image of that is up there, but it's hashtag body of evidence book art. I don't know.
Oh,
Some people
whoops.
have their own body of evidence thing. I don't know what that is, but the book art one is the one that I use.
Okay, let me do that again then. Body of evidence. I'm such a slow typer. Book art. Okay. And then if you also, another, Mina's other Instagram is her name, not hashtag thing. Okay. So then we have, so go ahead and, well, and I mean, this I thought was so funny. So was this the opening and y'all had this out in like
Yeah,
white artist tape?
yeah. That I happened upon that at the Visual Arts Center when we had a reading. So all of the artists, I'm sorry, all of the authors were able to come out, see the book for the first time, and we had all of Chuck's assemblages. We had refreshments. It was like a new opening, but for the book art.
Mm-hmm.
So we had readings from the authors. Phil Ford emceed it. He's one of the authors as well. So you can see, yeah, that image is of one of our writers, one of our authors. Actually, one of our pieces being read there. We had some ghost writers, which was kind of cool. But anyway, and I'm kind of up there doing what I'm doing here, and kind of addressing the audience, just kind of telling them how all of this came about. Um, but yeah,
So
we
there's
had an
two other
opening.
images that I think I would love because this is something we don't see. We haven't seen that yet. The tags and then these it's like luggage tags and they look like they're uh, old safety pins.
Yes.
Is that right?
So the authors got their own name tags made by Chuck, and I think Mim helped as well, if I'm correct. And these were their name tags to wear and to show who they were. And they're just the evidence tags, and each one of those people could pick up the very first piece that's inside of the book. Um, that just shows the uh, it's just the newsprint cutout article, the Ouija style sort of article um, that's in the very front of the book.
Well, and I also love that everything you wrapped everything around it, which I think is really cool. Again, as designers, we need to be able to do that. Even I love that name tag kind of idea. That's great.
That was all Chuck. Yeah.
Good job, Chuck. So that's cool. All right. So I think that's all. Well, there's one more body of evidence. That's you putting the
The
it's a
stickers.
small one. You putting the stickers on, and they're all different. So, sometimes we're like, oh, it's not in the exact same spot. Well, that's okay. If you were in an office and you were working, you're going to stick them on there, but they're not always going to be straight or not always going to be in the exact same spot every time. If so, you probably wouldn't be a cop, I would think, maybe.
Yeah, you'd be a
Um,
designer.
yeah, exactly. So let's talk about your sketchbook. So I'm just going to pull up some images and then you take these trips. So kind of back us up through it. So changing gears here.
Okay. So ever since 2009, I think, or was it 2010? It's one of those years. I started. Okay, I ride a scooter, so everyone should know that first off. But I ride what you might call a Vespa, except it's called a Stella. So let's get that clear. But I ride a scooter, and I do these trips every year, once a year, and I go with a motley crew of bike riders, from Harleys to old Vespas, BMW bikes, all of whatever. But I take these trips and I document these trips um, through my sketchbooks. And I just draw, if I'm sitting somewhere for 10 minutes waiting for my food because I'm ravaged hungry, um, Usually we're camping, by the way, so everything's piled on my Vespa, and I'm going without, without a hotel or anything like that. We're literally living off of our bikes. Um, I'll sit down and I'll draw for 10 minutes while I'm waiting for my food. Um, this one that you're seeing is actually on a plane, so that's not on my Vespa or anything. But that I think is going to Phoenix one year. But it doesn't matter, where I'm going, if it has to be on my scooter or not. I will draw everywhere that I am, as I'm sure many of us do. Um, but wherever I'm sitting, I will make sure to document wherever that is, as I'm traveling. And sometimes I'll write notes in there. Sometimes I'll take like little things that I find while I'm sitting somewhere, and I'll put that paper inside, and make it into a collage that way.
So
Yeah,
kind of
that's a
like this one,
diagramming
like the
hack.
little, yeah. So, um, oh, and one of the things when we were talking before, you had said, I mean, to me, I love not every line is perfectly straight, but it has such a quality. And it is, again, it's a, me as I'm looking at this, it's something I can taste almost. It gives me a feeling. And as we go through the rest of them, you'll see, I mean, you're stitching this. I see purple thread at the bottom. Um, but you said something to me and you said, "Oh, well, I was taught I needed to get I needed to get it down." Do
Yeah.
you remember telling me? Okay, can
Oh,
you
yeah.
talk about that?
Okay, so I mentioned at the very beginning of this entire interview that I went to the Illustration Academy after after I was in my got my BFA. So at the Illustration Academy, I had the most wonderful professors, including Sterling Hunley, who I know has been on here, George Pratt, a lot of really amazing people. And one of the most important things that I was ever taught was, well, okay, there are two. One, get it down quickly. People move, and if you're on the metro and you're drawing somebody, you want to get them down before they move, and you don't want them to see you because then that's creepy. So that was something that I was taught. And we had these 5-second poses that these people would hold for literally 5 seconds, and our model would shift and move. And we had to get as much as possible down. So I draw a lot of people sitting. I draw a lot of bars. I draw a lot of people interacting, and I do use the entire page on my sketchbook. Which actually, one illustrator, Tin Salamunic, actually told me once that that shows that I'm a designer because I clearly have to fill up the entire page. I don't know what that means, but I know that I like getting as much as possible down because I don't want to feel like I cheated myself later. So I try to get as much as possible down as quickly as possible. And I try to incorporate typography. I try to write things in there, to give a sense of the mood of where I was. I always date things, as you can see there. This is a coffee shop in New York. Um, that I was just sitting and waiting for a former student of mine who now works in Manhattan. So yeah, I try to get things down very quickly and try to get the essence of a place.
So I love that you don't want to be creepy for sure. But I also think you're adding other things. So I asked you, I was like, gosh, how can you get all this down that quickly? And you said sometimes um, I'm adding some things later. Um, and also like this, I love the green thing, and you use this green paper. I guess it's paper.
It is paper.
So and she's collecting these pieces when she's at her location or something, and then she's incorporating it in. And I love that. I love this one. I love the angles that you put the type. I mean, to me, this is one of my favorites, but I know that takes a ton of time to cut those out. And are you carrying glue with you on these? And I don't mean to point you with
It's
you at
true.
my.
I do. I was actually looking to see if I had one available, but I have. Oh, okay, Anne just called me out here. I always carry around a cigar box, and my cigar box has random paper samples. It's got an X-Acto
Hmm.
blade. It's got a small pair of scissors, and it's got a glue stick. And I've got an extra pen in there. But they're just regular cigar boxes, and everything I need is in there. And you just kind of take that with you wherever you're. I take that with me wherever I'm going.
So as somebody I am not that great. I mean, my sketches do not look like Do not look like that. That is for sure. So how can I get better? And maybe that somebody else on here feels the same way. So is it just practice? Is it putting that 5 minute, 5 second poses? Is it trying to get as much? And then, I mean, can you give us any tips?
Yeah. Most of us are afraid of drawing hands and feet. So
Mm,
I'm just going to start there and saying draw hands and feet over and over and over again. If you're sitting somewhere and there are no hands and feet to draw, what you should do is draw what you see. As typically we draw what we think that we see as opposed to what we actually are seeing in front of us.
mhm.
So it helps with perspective. It helps with it helps just to kind of understand the space that you're in. That you can't make it up. Um, and I sometimes I do make certain things up because I know that it'll look better in the long run, but I'm also practicing drawing everything that I'm seeing. I don't, and Anne is right, I don't use a pencil. I remember being in a coffee shop once. I was at Crossroads in the Fan here in Richmond, and I was sitting there and I was drawing one of the pieces that wound up being a piece that's hanging in my home now. Um, but it was drawn in pen, and this guy walks by me and he goes, "You must be pretty confident to draw in pen." And I looked at him and I said, "That's my job." I mean, you make the mistakes and you enjoy the mistake and you embrace the mistake and you learn from the mistake. And sometimes the mistakes are pretty cool. And if they're not, just turn the page and keep going.
Yeah, totally. And but I think one of the big things is just practice. Like just get out there and practice. Um I think that's kind of neat. I have recently um backed a project. There's 11 days to go. I'm going to actually put this up here. These people don't know me from anybody, so I'm just promoting stuff. I think that's what we should do. But it's a new camera, Lucida or
Yes.
whatever. I mess up things all the time. But you look through it and then it projects down onto paper and you're able to draw it. So it's a tool, fake tool, I guess. But anyway, it's on Kickstarter. There's 11 days to go. You could still order it. Anyway, just for people who are like me, who I still think we should do what you're doing and just push myself to do it. It's that, and I know Meredith, I think she'll connect with me. I don't want to make something ugly, but like I know. But I think a lot of designers are like that. I know. I'm just like the students in my class. I just want but like to me this is one of my favorites of yours. I knew Meredith would get would I love I love the way the type goes. I love how flowing it is. But I think what I'm going to do this summer from this, you're inspiring me to do this, is to just try. And just every time I'm sitting somewhere, just try. I mean, I have chickens, they move all the time. I
Oh,
could
yeah.
just go and practice drawing my chickens. Um, and then they're not going to care if I drew them ugly, they won't know. Um, and Meredith actually took something from last week's show. She had had a bad design week, and she posted it on the Design Recharge Facebook page. And I encourage you guys to follow and like it or whatever. It's something else to do, but that would be great if we could pull things that we're learning. Like I just love this piece. I just
That's
think
great.
this
My
piece of
husband was sitting in
yeah.
front of me. Mike, I think yeah, Michael Clifford is here. He he was right there when I was drawing that. We were waiting for our pizza. and
I
and
mean,
don't think for a minute that every time I put the pen down to a blank page that I'm not frightened. I am always frightened at that first stroke, and even when they come afterwards. But I mean, if you don't just keep on doing it, you're gonna have nothing. That's worse than having something that's ugly. I'd rather have something that's ugly
right.
that I tried on.
and and I used to, if I thought something was ugly, I would scratch it out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to stop doing that, because then you end up finding these little gems. If I hadn't scratched all over it, that it really wasn't so bad, but it was just me and Meredith will have to work up to ink, that's for sure. But but I think it's good. It's also a commitment. And I think Mike Rohde talked about that when we talked about sketchnoting. He said I wanted it to be perfect, and me putting it in pen made it so that I didn't have to. It was like, I know it's not going to be perfect. I'm just getting it out there. And I think that's helped me with sketchnoting. And I know Alma's talked about that on here as well. Um, I'm excited. So let me choose a couple more. And I mean, I like this one just because there's so many little pieces that you're pulling in. Like, I don't know if they're drawer pulls here.
They are.
I love the type, and I love that you cut out that music sheet and plopped it on top of your drawing. I mean, I love that. I
It's a
don't know
very
how you
loud
cut it
bar.
so well.
It's a very loud bar, and the music is always going, and so I felt like this is proper. One of my friends, his name is Willis. He has a daughter. She's a toddler. Her name is Columbia, and he's always at that bar, and sometimes he's had his daughter there with him, and so I thought Hail Columbia was a great piece to put on this one in particular. So
Oh yeah.
someone asked me previously, Jason asked me if I use papers that are, personal to me and important to me. Um, yeah, so this would be one of the instances where I did. Sometimes I'll wait to use a piece of paper. Sometimes I'll find the paper there, and then it's even more special. But you know, it I think you do have to be cognizant of what imagery you're putting on top of your other imagery, though. I think there is like a sort of a dance that you have to do.
Well, all those things influence. As designers, we know that. If if you're trying to portray that it's a loud bar and it has a lot of music, then I think this is very appropriate. Plus, you instead of cutting off the name of the piece, you included that on. So sorry, Jason, I didn't realize you had asked a question earlier. So there's Meredith said, how do you measure for the paper you're putting it in? Seems it would be hard after drawing that part. Do you use a light box? What kind of sketchbook are you using?
Um, I'm just using, one of these. And in fact, here's some work. Um, lots of bars. I'm usually sitting at a bar drawing things, but um, I will take a piece of tracing paper. That's all I do. Is I take a piece of tracing paper and I go over my drawing, and then I put it on top of the piece that I'm going to cut out. And I can use
Huh,
a
so
graphite
you,
pencil or something like that.
you make a little template, sort of.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. We can do that, Meredith.
Yep. See,
All right, so I think there's a couple more. So this is you have a person, and again,
that's
people
my husband.
move, but well, cool. So I guess maybe he could stay still, more still for you. But again, the paper, the the mot, I don't know what kind of paper that green paper is, but it's great. I love that paper. And
Yeah.
just that you're collaging the rest of the stuff around there is really cool.
That green paper, by the
And
way, I feel like I should say it's from an Air Force manual from the turn of the 20th century.
oh,
It's from the
cool.
1940s. What is wrong with me? Sorry. It's from an Air Force manual from the 1940s. But I love the way that it looks too. It's got this really nice sort of marbled effect. It's age. That's what it is. But,
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, there's a guy, Keith Tatum, who was on the show back in April. He takes stuff and he makes it look old. Um, and he talked about that a little bit, like taking new paper and then folding it and then doing stuff, which if you can't find really old or maybe you couldn't get yourself to rip up an Air Force manual, then you could kind of do some of the things, same things, or just like you did with the end papers from the body of evidence piece, you could scan it in and then adjust it from, you print it out and adjust it from there.
yeah, I've also been known to leave the new papers, just outside on the ground, and then after like a
Mm.
week or two, especially in the fall, because in the fall the leaves will fall down on it and they'll leave these beautiful imprints, and we can talk about that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna have Meena on again. Good, and if any. anybody ever your screen freezes, you can just refresh. So this is the last piece, and then I'm going to give you her contact information again and ways to contact me. Oops, at Design Recharge, and I just clicked on it, and now I went to Flickr, which you can actually click on these images, and they will take you to the Flickr, and it has a link to the show, and it says it's Meena and whatever. I'm not taking credit. I would love to take credit for these, um, but I'll post some, Meena, and you can encourage me to keep going. So here you've used an old photo, right?
Yes.
And then you kind of made your own pocket.
Yes. So the back of the photograph, I tore it apart. And so the back of the photograph already had a note on it. And I love these old notes from people, from people
Mm-hmm.
who have departed to people who have departed, or whatever. But this is an old photograph from somebody, um, or of somebody, and I guess they were writing to it. And I like to imagine that like their kid got a hold of a crayon and started drawing on top of it. That's why it's unintelligible. But I've made the back of the photograph into the pocket, and then stuck the photograph itself, which is now very flimsy, on the inside of it. And I just had these two scraps left. You remember the drawer pulls from New York Deli?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's part of the Hail Columbia that you're seeing that I cut out for the drawer. And then I had this sliver from uh, of that Air Force manual, and I just thought it was a beautiful. I threw them down, and I thought they'd be beautiful like that, so I just left them like
It's
that.
a
And
nice, it's a really nice ending because that's the end of the sketchbook, right?
mhm,
Yeah, that's beautiful to me. So this is my husband's Uncle Willie, which I think is a great picture. But they didn't get a crayon, but
that's
it's that
great.
same sort of thing.
That's
Like
great.
like I love that part as well, that there is that, because these were precious. This was um in the 1930s, and
Hmm.
but that they let them, I mean, my mom would have killed me had I done this, but it's just these marks and we think they're beautiful. And I love that. It helps with that story as
Hmm.
well. So that's really cool. All right, guys. So here's how we can reach Meena. Again, here's her Twitter handle, and here's her Instagrams, which I know we'll all be following. And then there's two other ways. She has a website and a blog, and I would definitely suggest you guys following both. I'm going to put them over on the right hand side as well. So they're over there. You can actually click in there, so those are easy. And um, Meena, I'm just gonna real quick. I mean, I hope that I know we've already talked about doing another one, but she had so many to talk about. I was like, well, we'll talk about body of evidence, and then we'll just mention your sketchbook. So we may come a little bit deeper into her sketchbooks next time, as well as she has a couple projects that we're gonna attack. So
Yep.
I'm real excited. So again, you can always reach me at designrecharge.org. This is, you should sign up for the email. You get a list of the questions. Only the VIP subscribers get these questions beforehand. I ask you to send me questions as well. People haven't, but I would love to hear what questions you want to know. Anyway, and then you can always on Twitter, I have two, at Diane Gibbs AU, and then at Design Recharge. And then feel free, go to Facebook, post stuff. I was so glad Meredith posted something last week. And then you can always reach me at Diane at designrecharge.org. Meena, I can't tell you thank you enough. You really encouraged me as well as really inspired me. And I'm so excited to go out there and start drawing. So, and I think the body of evidence thing's super cool. I got to work that into a client piece somehow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
So
much for
thank
having
you.
me, Diane.
Oh, thank you for your expertise, and tell Chuck thank you, and his pieces are awesome, and I'm really excited to see the story, and I'm going to do my best to get my library to purchase. So you'll be getting a tweet from me. So
Awesome.
thanks, Jason. We'll see you guys next week. Anne will be helping us out next week. We're going to be talking about creativity and what to do when you're in a creative block. So if you guys have some, I mean, to me, that's a hard thing, and I end up solving problems the same way. So I think sometimes it's really good to get out, like Meena goes on her trips. I'm sure that, wow, that's, well, delete that one. I'm sure that there's some things that you guys might want to know. Feel free, email me, and we'll get some stuff about creativity, and we'll try to um, let me we'll try to get all that stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to be like do a little bit of everything. DJ is what I call. I'm the DJ here. So anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Again, thank you, Meena, so much. You were awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.